I'm one of the IFMA member education committees. You guys should all be on the NFPA 241, standing for Safeguarding Construction, Alterations, and Demolition Operations. Everyone is on mute except for myself and Alan Frazier, who is the representative from NFPA 241. I asked if anyone does have any questions. I'll be looking in the chat function of the GoToMeeting. So if you guys have any questions on the line, please feel free to send a chat, and at a time, either on the current subject, I can intervene and ask Alan the question, or if it's just a generic question, we'll wait to the very end and we can ask all questions. Just to give you guys a brief I'm going to give a high level and Alan will go into more detail, but as facility managers, we're responsible for managing change that can include construction of existing buildings, and this can be either a rehab, alteration, demolition, and essentially all the other good infrastructure projects that facility managers get involved with to minimize impact to operations. And Alan's going to go into more detail with the NFPA 241 on what it is and who's responsible, because people can be confused on the process and who actually does own it. Alan is NFPA Senior Building Code Specialist. His projects include staffing 6 technical committees and NFPA's Disability Access Review and Advisory Committee. Alan represents the NFPA on a number of committees of other organizations as well. He's an expert in code administration. He was the building commissioner in 5 different municipalities over a 27-year career. He's been on state and regional technical committees, taught building code at professional seminars and continuing education programs, and holds both state and national certifications. With that being said, Alan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Andrew. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled that you can take the time to listen in and get a little more knowledge about NFPA 241. Because as facility managers, this document is extremely important to you and to your building owners and to your community, believe it or not. Now, I'll ask you a quick question, and I know you can't answer it, but I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it. When did NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, begin to develop the standard NFPA 241 for safeguarding construction, alteration, and demolition? Now, while you're thinking about that, let me give you a little background. NFPA has been in business for about 118 years, 15 years, something like that. NFPA was founded in 1896, and we develop hundreds of codes and standards for the built environment. Now, the first National Building Code, I'm sure most of you have no idea what that was published in 1905 by the National Board of Fire Underwriters and was immediately adopted in a number of big cities. Well, 1905, NFPA 241 about safeguarding stuff being built actually was started in 1930. It's been around for 85 years. This is part of the fire record, which was in that 1930 edition. And if you look at the top, it talks about fire resistive construction. Now, all these fires were in New York City, and this is what brought people's attention to this problem. In a couple of decades, there were some major fires there. Vanderbilt Hotel, 1912, the Pennsylvania Hotel in 1918, et cetera, et cetera. And then down below, there were a number of buildings that were ordinary construction, meaning they had wood structural members in them and the dollar values in those. Now, one that's of note is the Riverside Drive Church, which burned to the ground about a week from being completed in 1928. In the 1928 dollars, that was $1.5 million. In today's dollars, that's 30 million. And the only reason that church was rebuilt, and rebuilt almost instantly, was because that was Nelson Rockefeller's church, and he paid for it. Now, many of you know the name George Santayana. Very wise man, wrote many, many books and taught at a number of colleges and universities, in fact, around the world. And from his Life of Reason in 1905, he wrote that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And unfortunately, it's true. If we think about those fires that started in NFPA 241, more recently in 2005, the Avalon Bay complex in Edgewater, New Jersey, lost 2/3 of its 235-unit complex in a major fire. There is no estimate on the damage of that fire at this point. March 17th of 2017 in Raleigh, North Carolina, a 241-unit apartment building burned in downtown. In March 21st of 2017 in Overland, Kansas, an apartment tower and 22 nearby homes were burned. The fire was so intense, as you can see here, that it blew across the road. Sparks and embers started 22 homes burning. So you think about the extent of damage from a fire. It's not necessarily just the building of origin, but it can be many other things. It can be jobs. It can be businesses that don't open on time and revenue is lost. It can be homes across the street and what it does to families there. July 7th of 2017 in Oakland, California, 196 apartments and 31,000 square feet of retail space burned in downtown Oakland. Closer to home here for us in Quincy, July 23rd, 2017 in Waltham, Mass, 264 apartments were total loss, $110 million. July 26th, 2017 in Dorchester, Massachusetts, the southern end of Boston, 83 apartments were burned for a total of $45 million in damage. In September 14th of 2017 in Weymouth, Massachusetts, 50 condos worth $30 million were several weeks from being occupied. Most of them were already sold, burned to the ground. National Builder was building those. So when we look at the overview, that picture to the left is the Riverside Church when it burned. And I'd like to show you in real life video what can happen to these.
The perfect small business that you can start. What would that look like?
Let me skip the ad here. It's March 26th of 2014. It's an apartment complex in Houston.
This guy is on the freaking ledge. Oh, look at this. Oh my God.
Where?
Do they see?
This is being viewed from across the street, an office complex. This building went up so fast that this construction worker is pinned on the what is the fourth floor deck of this building. He couldn't get to an exit. But I want you to watch what happens at the end of this. It's only a 2-minute video. But in the course of 2 minutes, I want you to see how destructive a fire can be. Watch the firefighter on the ladder. He's frantic to get the ladder into a position to save this gentleman.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Oh, God. Hell, he can jump from there. I mean, good grief.
See the firefighter waving his arms frantically.
Oh, my God. I think that we probably should be going. Hell yes. Oh, thank you.
Now watch in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. This is only 2 minutes during this fire.
Oh my God. Oh no, my God. Oh. Hey, what about this guy? What about the guy? They got him. Oh, okay.
Pretty scary.
Jesus.
Fire in buildings under construction, under renovation, under demolition can go very, very quickly. Andrew, am I okay? Am I back on the screen correctly?
Yep, you're good. Crystal clear.
Yes. All right, so this picture is in Boston, and we don't read a lot about these kinds of incidents. The big fires make a big news, but this was October of 2016. Two unidentified men died in a trench in Boston, flooded when a pipe burst, and the two men became trapped in a 15-foot hole as the street flooded in seconds. Emergency responders arrived in minutes, but it was already too late. It took 2 hours for two bodies to be recovered from the Dartmouth Street trench. Building officials are investigating the flood and the company doing the work. The company allegedly has a history of violating safety regulations, which would include NFPA 241. 241 is a unique standard. It's not a brick and mortar standard, but a standard about the process of putting brick and mortar in place. The standard ceases to apply once the building is finished, when a CO is issued. Here's another fire in a building under construction in College Park, Maryland. Fuse 47 went up, $39 million in damage. The potential for extensive damage is greatest when a building is under construction because it's largely unprotected. If we think about a mother gorilla and her infant, mother gorilla is huge. She's strong. She's powerful. She's there. She protects her infant. Infant gorillas actually remain in contact, physically touching their mothers until they are between 4 and 6 years old, because gorillas are not fully adult until they're about 10 years old. So much like the infant gorilla, a building under construction needs constant supervision and inspection. And this is key, which is not possible or practical by municipal inspectors. What's okay at 8 o'clock in the morning may have changed, and it may not be okay by 5 o'clock that day, or even by noontime. Construction projects today move very rapidly, and these buildings aren't ready to protect themselves. Code required passive and active fire suppression systems such as sprinklers, smoke detection, fire alarms, and firewalls are typically non-existent until a building is near completion. Regardless of the material used in the construction of the building, wood, steel, concrete, prolonged exposure to fire without mitigation can lead to structural weakness and potential collapse. Now, we talk about active fire protection not being in a building. That building in Boston that burned was finished or virtually finished. Sprinkler systems were in, the standpipes were in, they were all operational, they were filled with water, but the valve was turned off because the contractor and the building owner were waiting for the fire department to come in and inspect the sprinklers. Now, that fire started, construction workers could smell fire literally for an hour and a half. They smelled smoke. They knew something was going on. They didn't report that to the fire department for an hour and a half. Had those sprinklers been on, that fire would have been extinguished. Now, buildings don't spontaneously combust. There has to be an ignition source. And fires that occurred during the construction process are most often attributable to human error or a lack of understanding and training. Ignition sources include, but aren't limited to, temporary heaters, welding, cutting, grinding, soldering, and roofing of various kinds. These ignition sources aren't permanent, and they're brought onto the site and into the building by people who need to use them. They may only be there for a day or two, but one mistake and the safety procedures for using them can destroy the building. It can spread to other buildings. There are a lot of hot things that we use in construction that need to be watched. And today we work in different trades in so many silos with nobody watching what's going on. And these massive construction fires are generally a result of that. Such fires are apt to cause losses far beyond the actual physical property destroyed. They delay completion of the building with a consequent loss of revenue. Important business projects contingent upon occupancy of a structure on a given date may thus be seriously delayed, even by a fire that causes relatively small direct loss. In instances where a fire starts during non-work frame hours, arson may also be possible, and appropriate security must be considered. That $110 million condo project in Waltham that burned to the ground was arson. There was no security on the site. There were no fences around the site. There were no cameras around the site. Now think about that. What is the cost of that security during construction relative to $110 million loss? My argument is it's peanuts. Now, fires in buildings under construction generate extensive media coverage, and businesses with good reason don't like that kind of media coverage. Here's an example. In that building downtown Raleigh that burned, that picture you can see there, after Raleigh apartment fire, safety of wood construction is questioned, is the headline. Well, I just told you, it's got nothing to do with wood construction. That didn't start the fire. Could the massive Raleigh apartment fire happen in Charlotte? Now we're panicking the Charlotte construction community and the Charlotte business community. Videos show massive fire in downtown Raleigh. I understand this is good press, it's spectacular, but it's also the result of mistakes. Massive fire engulfs Raleigh apartment building under construction, Associated Press. Fire chief, apartment building inspected 50 times before the blaze. Well, I'd already told you that municipal building and fire inspectors can't possibly do the job that's required to protect construction operations. He's done this 50 times. Well, the building's probably been under construction for 360, 400 days. So how many inspections and what length of time were actually conducted? Monstrous fire destroys apartment building in Raleigh. So how do you and your own building owners, you as facility manager, your building owners, what's the key to success here? Well, NFPA started writing the keys for success back in 1930. And those that have observed them have been successful. We haven't had major fires in construction with those buildings. And in NFPA 241, Chapter 7, the building owner is required to hire a fire prevention program manager. And that fire prevention program manager has the authority to enforce the provisions of NFPA 241 and other applicable fire protection standards. So the fire prevention program manager needs to have knowledge of the applicable fire protection standards, available fire protection standards and fire inspection procedures. So we're talking about an individual, man or a woman, that gets hired as a fire prevention manager that needs to know an awful lot, not only about building construction, but about fire protection and the process of construction. We're talking somebody that's going to command salaries in the six-figure range, possibly $150,000, $200,000. And security measures, if they're going to use fences and cameras and whatever. So you might have an expense of $300,000 a year. But the folks that originally started this code and the folks that now write it believe that it's very cheap insurance. If you spend $300,000 to prevent a $100 million fire, that's probably a good investment. You need to have a fire prevention program. This fire prevention manager sets up the program, looks at what's going to be inspected, and either he or she or their staff are going to walk this building constantly. Some stuff is going to be inspected monthly. Some stuff is going to be inspected weekly, some daily. Some processes are going to be inspected multiple times a day. And the fire prevention program manager has the authority to stop the contractor right there until it's corrected. They also, if it's built into the contract, They can fire the contractor and they can fine the contractor contractually. Municipal departments can't do that. First of all, they don't have the manpower. And secondly, they don't have the contractual ability to do that. Constant vigilance during the construction process is what prevents fires. So again, the fire protection program manager needs to know about 17 standards in NFPA 241. Portable fire extinguishers. These need to be hooked, literally hooked to the belts of a lot of construction workers. Guys that are welding, gals that are grinding. If there's any hot work, there needs to be an extinguisher right there, not 50 feet away, so they can grab it. Now, if you think about a welder and a welder's helmet, it might also be a good idea to have a laborer standing with them with the fire extinguisher. Why? Has anybody ever looked through a welder's helmet? You can't see anything. So he can be welding and grinding, and his sparks can be lighting a fire in a wood pallet at their feet, in sawdust, in anything around them, and they won't even see it until it's roaring and they feel the heat from it. NFPA 13, standard for installation for sprinkler systems. 14 for standpipes. 30 for flammable and combustible gas code. 31 for the installation of oil burning equipment. 51, design and installation of oxygen, fuel gas systems for welding, cutting, and allied processes, and on and on. This fire prevention program manager has to have broad knowledge of all of these pieces. The fire prevention manager must keep inspection records and have them available for viewing when requested. Now think about a construction project. All kinds of goods and materials are being brought onto that site to be incorporated into the building. They may be blocking roadways. They may be blocking access. Part of NFPA 241 requires that every exterior wall of the building being constructed must be within 150 feet of the point that a fire engine can get to. So if that driveway gets blocked for a day, and it may very well, there needs to be an alternative path. That needs to be checked constantly. And the fire prevention manager is the one that works with the fire department to do pre-fire plans and update them with the fire department as the building changes, because you may have a different roadway. There may be another building being put in place, and now they can't get to the first one. They're the ones that need to notify the fire department of where all the working water and such is in. Some requirements, as I said, may need to be inspected on a monthly basis. Others may be checked weekly, daily, or even multiple times per day, depending on what the problems are. And if you would like to check out more information about NFPA, our history, our codes and standards, and all of the free material that we have available on our website, as well as a lot of other things, direct you to nfpa.org. And Andrew, if we have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this point.
Thank you, Alan. Right now, I don't see anything new for the chat function, but I was hoping on one question we could clarify just for people on the phone, whether they already know the answer or think they know the answer, or it's something new that they haven't thought of, is just the actual process, I guess, for, you made it clear that the owner is responsible for it, and oftentimes general contractors, especially within the Boston area, we've really noticed within the last year or two, you can hear the general contractors talking that Boston Fire is requiring an NFPA 241, and I think some facility managers think it may be the general contractor working with the building owner in order to get the permits through Boston Fire. But I guess, could you just elaborate or clarify that it is the building owner that should be the one who has the information, has the plan, and that upon the request from the general contractor, they can have the plan to bring to BFD to get the permitting. But I think some people rely on the general contractor to perform that. And I don't think that's, I guess, 100% accurate.
Yeah, that's a fairly common belief and a common practice, and it's not the case. If 241 is adopted in a community and it is adopted through the International Building Code, the International Fire Code, and NFPA's Fire Code, and is mandated, it's a direct reference in all of those, it doesn't matter whether the fire department gets involved or not. They're doing some administrative processes. They want to know that there's a plan in place. They want to know that it's a pre-fire plan. And that certainly is their right to do it, and it's the right of any community to do it. However, unless the community adopts 241 and takes that requirement out for the building owner and the fire program manager, then it's still in play. And what I've been teaching and will be teaching, I'm going to do a seminar for the Tennessee Fire Marshals beginning of the month, is that fire departments would be very wise to go out and do train the trainer type of stuff. Go through 241 with building owners and any fire prevention, fire protection program managers that building owners may have, and say, look, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to contact us. It's very, very important that the building owners take the responsibility. That's what the law says when it's adopted, and it's true in Boston. And again, the situation you saw in Raleigh, and I heard it from the Boston Fire Commissioner after that fire. He said, "Look, you know, we've inspected that building dozens of times." That's absolutely true. But the fire occurred when the emergency generator in the building was being tested. Now, I don't know why somebody testing the generator wasn't aware that there was an issue, but the generator's exhaust pipe went up through the roof, and it was supposed to have a 12-inch clearance all the way around that stack with a metal cap that would keep the weather out, but essentially to be 12 inches away from any combustible material. It was only 3 inches away. It was a code violation that started that fire, further exacerbated by the fact that the sprinkler system wasn't on. And if I had been the fire protection program manager in that building, I would have turned on the fire system. What's the worst that can happen? I'm gonna get the building wet. Yeah, okay. So if it's leaking, we turn it off. We know there's a problem. But at least it would have been available in that scenario, assuming there weren't any leaks, to put out the fire. It was further exacerbated by the fact that the construction crews smelled smoke. They saw a blue haze coming through this building and didn't report it to anybody for an hour and a half. So by the time the fire department got notice and they got there, the building was lost. It had already burned through the roof. You saw that video of that fire complex, of that apartment complex in Houston. Doesn't take long. And now you've got the fire department there. They're trying to rescue a construction worker who got trapped on it. So you don't want to leave this job to the fire department. It's way beyond their capacity. Not that they're not good people, not that they're not smart people. The fact is they don't have enough manpower to have the man hours on the project site. That's where it's needed. Because there are, in many cases, there are no passive or active systems in place. The sheetrock isn't up, alarms aren't up. A fire needs to be extinguished very, very rapidly to prevent the loss of the entire building. And 241 is the way to do it, with a fire prevention program manager on site. Does that help, Andrew?
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thank you, Alan. And then I guess just one more would be, is the NFPA 241, is it always required? Meaning a lot of the facility managers are overseeing construction projects, and that could range from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing job, a job that may require a sprinkler impairment, where one, I'm guessing, would definitely be required. However, some of them could be outside where they're doing, say, a new paver or a new sidewalk. Are there, I guess, is there projects that 100% require the NFPA 241 permit? And are there other ones that are exempt because it's not applicable? Or I guess, when should an NFPA 241 be required?
Well, 241 doesn't have any exemptions. There are within it certain things, like if a building doesn't have a sprinkler system in it, why are you going to worry about putting one in? But it should, the 241 should be used for virtually any size construction project, and those things that don't apply get checked off. If you're not doing roofing, you don't need to deal with the roofing section. If you're not doing underground operations, you don't need that section. So my best advice is, and the document is required through these, through the fire code and through the building code, that the building manager, the facility manager probably is the appropriate individual to go through, take your checklist, create a checklist, and go down through it and say, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply. I don't need it at all. Or I need only these things, or I need only those things. As long as you can document why you made your decision, I will almost guarantee that any facility manager is going to make the right decision.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. No, thank you very much, Alan. I appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
And I would just say, for the people that are online, I know working with the NFPA, through the IFMA, for the people that registered, we could send out an email just as an NFPA. There's a free copy of the, there's a link that you can go to and download a free copy. So we'll be sending that out. And in addition, this was a recording, and once we download this, the IFMA community, IFMA Boston, will post it on the IFMA YouTube channel, just in case you wanted to follow up, or there was something that you missed and wanted to see it again. So with that being said, thank you everyone for attending today. There are no questions, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And my contact information is up there, Andrew. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Awesome. Thank you again, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.